Hello and welcome back to the Nash Metal Productions channel here at YouTube. Welcome to the first Album of the Week video for the new year. Now, today's Album of the Week goes to Anvil Strength of Steel, which was their fourth full-length album. Now, why I'm picking this? Well, at least I had to pick an Anvil album to at least, in a way, to kind of almost pump up at least, to kind of get ready for, of course, their new studio release, Legal at Last, which will be released here on the 14th this week. But for right now, let's definitely, at least for a while, take a moment to focus on their fourth studio album, Strength of Steel, which was released on May 21st, 1987. Now, this was, of course, their follow-up to 1983's Forged in Fire, which, again, you can see right there was a gap. I mean, from 83 to 87, there was a gap for like 3 years. There was, of course, that compilation that Attic released called Backwaxed, which is basically half B-side and unreleased recording, and of course, and half basically best of. But they were just doing that, I guess, to almost just to tide some people over. But during that time, though, while they were, Anvil were definitely were, I guess, trying to get out of the deal with Attic, and. Again, it seems to all go with management. I guess you all at least have seen these. Was it the story of Anvil? See the film and probably read the books. You probably at least know why there was at least a bit of a gap in between these two albums. But nonetheless, they did get when this album came out, they were signed to Metal Blade and Enigma, which again, at this time, Metal Blade Records and Enigma Records were partnering up to at least co-release some albums. I know Enigma, here I'm looking at Metal Archives, released a CD version, at least one of the first CD pressings for this album, whereas Metal Blade and along with Enigma definitely released the vinyl pressings. So Metal Blade at least released the vinyl at the time. Anyways, when this album did come out, this was kind of a panned album. Some definitely thought this was more of a sellout album from Anvil, and some will say that it wasn't nearly as good, or if anything, was worse than Forged in Fire. And I mean, Forged in Fire, to this day, is still considered one of Anvil's most classic albums. But Strength of Steel, some said it was one of the worst follow-ups. Personally, I think this actually is one of Anvil's best albums. I mean, I think I like it just as much as some of the previous three Anvil albums, which again, Hard and Heavy, Metal on Metal, and Forged in Fire. I think there's plenty of solid, at times some very good deep cuts on this album. I mean, there is really definitely plenty of a pretty good, like, what you could say, diamonds in the rough on this album. That being, of course, the title track, Concrete Jungle, which is a song that's right now playing in the background. Playing with that, I Dreamed It Was the End of the World, which is, again, to me, is a personal favorite of mine. And, of course, you got the instrumental, Fly the Bumblebee. I don't know if I can say the title, this instrumental here is up to par with, let's say, March of the Crabs, or even, of course, the most recent instrumental being Pounding the Pavement. I don't know if I could say it's anywhere near there, but it's definitely a decent, solid instrumental that, again, is able to have Lips strut his stuff on the guitar. I mean, of course, to me, I have definitely, have kind of in previous time, I definitely rank Lips as probably one of my favorite guitar players from the 1980s. I think he's a very underrated guitar player. And definitely on Fly the Bumblebee, I think he definitely is able once to strut his stuff on here. Other classic tracks I do dig off of here is also Straight Between the Eyes is another real favorite of mine. Of course, I guess you can say this is actually one of all the song that really piqued my interest to want to even check out the album because of I was definitely at the time I was into watching horror films, and this, I mean, at the time I was slowly getting into Anvil, but this song was used in the slasher film Sleepaway Camp 2, and it was used in the opening credit scene. I just thought that is a fucking killer riff. And so and since at the time I didn't own any Anvil albums, but when I heard that song and after got done watching the film, I was definitely going to the record stores at least to try and find a copy of Strength of Steel. This was again to October 2009. There was no reissue of Strength of Steel, so I had no luck coming across this album out in the wild, especially any of the CD copies. Maybe vinyl, but even then it wasn't very easy to find this album at all. That definitely got changed in 2012 when the N Records, which of course at the time, the N Records had signed Anvil to do at least to do American releases, and so of course the label did do the American pressings for their at that time of that this reissue came out. Juggernaut of Justice was their most recent album. Anyways, though, that was the first time that Strength of Steel got reissued, and again, it's been back in print, so it's not very hard to come by. I know Steamhammer, which of course at that time also Anvil, also got signed mostly for a lot of the European versions and pressings for, also did like European reissues for this album. But let's definitely get back to at least some of the songs here. Again, Straight Between the Eyes is definitely an absolute favorite. I also did Cut Loose, Kiss of Death, and Paper General, all pretty good songs. Of course, there's a really good cover track on here, which of course is Wild Eyes, which was originally done by the Stampeders. That's another killer track. Of course, that was also used in Sleepaway Camp, but it would be the third film. Actually, as far as the opening film scene in the movie. Definitely definitely a great cover. And of course, Anvil has done some decent covers. I mean, I dig their cover for Paint It Black from the Rolling Stones, and of course, I do like their rendition of Born to Be Wild, which apparently hasn't been recorded, but it's definitely been played live. That's for sure. That's definitely a good cover. Though. I am forgetting about one song on the sound. That's, of course, is probably was in a way kind of I don't know if you could say it was a big hit for Anvil, but it definitely got quite a bit of rotation. That's, of course, is Mad Dog. This might be the most commercial sounding song on the album, however, it's still very decent. Of course, this is probably since the Hard and Heavy album, this Mad Dog really at times has a pretty big Ted Nugent influence on here. It definitely has that feel to it. Again, not since the Hard and Heavy album, which that album definitely had plenty of Ted Nugent influences and feel to that album, which of course Lips is definitely a known Ted Nugent fan. You can definitely ask Scott Waters. Anyways, all in all, I think this is definitely one of Anvil's good albums. I don't think this is anywhere their worst, nor would I say this is a sellout album. I mean, sure, the band picture on the back of the album is definitely a little pushing. I mean, they kind of do start to look a bit of a hair metal band, I guess you can say, but a lot of metal bands at the time of the late 80s were kind of had that look. Even a few thrash metal bands, the speed metal bands, it just became the look, basically. It was a trend. But it didn't, to me, when I listen to this album, I don't think it really affected much of the album. To me, it still sounds like classic Anvil. it still has that sort of straight, sort of meat and potatoes, no BS, blue collar heavy metal sound that you definitely got at least on the first 3 Anvil albums, and even preceding this one. Even on some of the more recent albums, you can still hear at least the sound that at least you got on this album. It's again, it's nothing different from Anvil. Again, I will even go on record and still say that Anvil are just one of those bands to where each album, at least in a way, is at least is what you can expect. Again, I put Anvil on the same pedestal as bands like Motorhead or even AC/DC. It's just each album is at least, I don't know if you can say sound the same, but it definitely is more what you come to expect. Again, a band that has a formula in some ways, and again, they don't feel like they have to change it. So Anvil are Anvil. So there you go. Before I end this, definitely let me know what were your thoughts on this album. So until then, I hope, and also let me know if you're looking forward to Legal Ass. This Every Thrasher Sam out, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Take care.